Hello and welcome to another episode of The Modern Nerd. I am Tim Bolin,
I am Dan Smirch.
I'm GJC.
and we are, as always, massive nerds. Now, as you can tell, we are expanding our nerddom into Rasslin in this very special two-part episode. So make sure to tune in. You can catch it all live with us now as we record it, but I will be putting this up in two episodes, so fear not. We have a lot to say. You'll be able to pace it out and really take it all in with us so you don't get overwhelmed by the wrestling. Before we dive deep into that, we'll just do a quick catch up. There's not going to be a lot happening here. I'll go. I watched Uncharted last night. It wasn't bad. It was one of the better video game adaptation movies, but like there was just no chemistry.
Continues.
No chemistry between Mark Wahlberg and Tom Holland, and it was sad. I wanted it to work, but it got super ridiculous with their giant third act chase / battle. It was absurd. But I mean, it was a rental, so whatever.
What we gotta do to get a good video game adaptation?
We'll go over that. Didn't we do that? We did that on an episode.
We did do that. I don't think it's up on the. It's not on the YouTube, but yeah, we did.
Yeah, check out the Spotify. It's got the video game adaptation one that we did. We go deep into that one.
Video game adaptations, aka like the tolerable ones.
Did we actually do that one? Anyway, that's all I got. I'm not playing anything new.
George, have you heard of the Orville?
Ooh.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
George, I'm telling you, it's really good. I was so skeptical.
You know who was talking about that? Persnackety was talking about that. She was scared that it got canceled. It got moved to a different channel.
Yeah. I don't know who that is, but she's got good taste. And I was like on YouTube, saw a trailer for the return season coming back to Hulu. And that trailer gave me goosebumps like a fucking Marvel trailer. I was like, do I need to watch this? And the first episode's like, it's fine. But then it's Star Trek. It is Star Trek. Like front and back. Like you will get like the feelies of like they deal with real shit. And comedy is like comedy's like third or fourth on the list of like what they're trying to do in that show. And it's maybe even lower. It's like science fiction and story first, and it's good. And Seth MacFarlane, gotta say, probably his best on-screen acting job. He's doing pretty good. Me and Tim have talked about this. Never really liked him, but yeah, he's good.
It's his little love letter to Star Trek. It came out a while ago.
It's like his dream come true, and I'm glad for him because they're pulling it off with flying colors.
Yeah, so it's fantastic.
I'm loving it.
Anything to report, George? New computer.
I watched. Oh yeah, I got a new computer. That was pretty pog. You guys can check out my Twitter. I posted a video of it. Let's see. I watched Death on the Nile, starring Gal Gadot.
I saw that too.
It was okay. It was. I guess I kind of liked it better maybe than the first one. The first one was okay too. They're not amazing, but I enjoy the premise and I like mysteries. I watched 2 mountain climbing documentaries on Netflix: The Alpinist, and then the other one was about the Nepalese mountain climber who like did all 14 8,000 above ascents and within one season. He's a record holder. So it's like Everest, K4, all those Himalayan mountains that are above 8,000 feet. He did it all in 1 year during one climbing season. So it's like amazing. And he's Nepalese, which is awesome. As far as games, haven't played anything new. Been playing Hearthstone, but as usual. But there is a cool thing that I think Tim would like, and I talked to Smirch about, is that our idol god Ben Brode made a game called Marvel Snap. It is the new Marvel card collecting game.
Yeah,
he's the man who invented Hearthstone, and he's like, I mean, like if you love Hearthstone from like what was good and pure about it back in the day, and like all the good things that me and Smirch remember about classic Hearthstone come from this man. Like, well, man, so they entrusted probably the guy to go to make a card game. They poached him from Blizzard and was like, here's a bunch of money, go make a Marvel card game. And he was
We'll
like,
see.
ha, 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 well met. And also big up on him. He looks great. Guy
Dude,
obviously trimmed
yeah,
down a
dude.
bunch. He looks great. Cut back on the Illuminati's pizzas,
on
probably.
Why?
that Marvel diet.
On that
That
Marvel
seems to work
diet,
for
he's got to look
everyone.
like a
Marvel
superhero.
diet.
They're about to turn him into a card.
Is he a Chicagoan?
No, but
No.
he is a big fan of Luz.
I mean, who's not?
He's a big fan of Luz. Brian Kibler one time was asking about wanting to have really good pizza, and he suggested Illuminati's, and
Damn
then
right.
shipped it
Awesome.
out to him, and the two of them were talking about it on Twitter. So
That's so cool.
We could have a whole episode on pizza, but
we should. We should. Go, you know what? Me and Smirch will go around all the Chicago pizza places and try to like test it out.
I'll come.
we'll
I'll come
go-
home for that one, and we'll get a GoPro
We'll come out
and do
and
all
we'll
the
come out with the
interviews.
pizza box right in the sidewalk and like just talk shit about whatever we feel like. And
We're
be a
like,
huge
this is
asshole
not as
and be
good as
really
Luz.
violent.
Wherever we are, this is not as good as Luz.
Equad's pretty good. They're pretty
Equads
good.
is my number one.
Anyway. Ooh.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
know, here we
That's
go.
okay.
Yeah,
Now
We're moving
getting
on.
down.
Moving
Yeah.
on before we get too deep into pizza. There's no
Chicagoans and their pizza.
the pizza
It's
out
a
here is
hot dog
interesting.
sandwich. Ah!
Yes.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck.
All right.
Wrestling.
So, wrestling, ladies and gentlemen. I personally have been watching since like 87, 88, since I was old enough to understand TV. I was a Hulkamaniac growing up, and you know, this stuff is basically like part of my blood now. It's in me for life. There's no getting rid of it. When I was a young kid, you know, like 6, everyone would be like, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I was like, "I want to go to pro wrestling college," and you know, that was what I wanted to do. So, we are going to, in this first part, kind of just go through the timeline. We're going to start really right around the Attitude Era, late 90s to the early 2000s, and kind of work our way to now. There'll probably be some gaps. I think George was maybe the only one paying attention to it during like the Ruthless Aggression and parts of the PG era. So we'll kind of go from there. Let's kind of go and down memory lane. And go back to you know, it was late 97, early 98 really when we started getting the Attitude Era. We had the early iterations of the Monday Night Wars. There's so many like key moments and everything to talk about and break down, but we'll kind of get into that. What if we all had to pick an era, what would be our top era? I mean, mine's obviously Attitude by far for me. Anyone disagree?
Nope.
George? Okay.
Nah. I don't have. I mean, like, I don't know. It's hard to say as far as like favorite era, but I guess Asher Attitude is when I first started. It's hard, you know.
Close.
This is the thing is we all, whether it's wrestling or comics or movies or whatever, there is a bit of nostalgia like lens that we all have, which is like that's the era that we were born in. So I'm wondering if somebody in a younger generation or even a slightly older generation than us by like 10 years, when they first started watching wrestling as kids, maybe they might choose a different era. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I don't know, because obviously kids who weren't born during the Attitude Era can't say the Attitude Era per se, like you know, unless they go back and watch it.
It's too hard to compete with, because right now for us we have both the nostalgia factor and like the fact that like since we were like things are already hard to compete with, like when you have nostalgia working for you, like from your childhood. And I also genuinely think that was like the best era in wrestling. So when you combine those two facts, like how could wrestling ever be that good again?
Yeah.
I don't. It hasn't been. They've tried things, and I really thought that the competition with AEW would start bringing out the competitive side in Vince and WWE. But so far, I don't know.
Not really.
It's too late for me. I think I've moved on. I will always be a wrestling fan at heart, but like it's hard. It's a time commitment. There's a lot happening, a lot to follow, and the thing that's doing that right now, I'm trying to like that's taking too much time is Critical Role, and so that's my time consumer right now. I can't have two of those in my life with massive amounts of content, and I think Critical Role right now is way more rewarding. I feel like I don't know. I don't want to get too into it, but I just want to say that I think that we, it's like we root for individuals in wrestling, like who we want to see succeed,
Mm.
and wrestling as a whole, I just feel like is really hard to be a real fan right now. It's a real
Mhm.
challenge. Like you really have to
Oh
like
yeah.
wrestling, and it's like I I find myself asking the question like,
Yeah.
is this worth it? And for me, lately, I mean, not
We're
really.
definitely
But
going to dive into the recent controversy too, because I want to talk about it.
Yeah, I want to talk about
absolutely,
that for sure. Let me put this out there though. I'm going to put out a statement, and this is how I feel about it. Is um, the Attitude Era for me was the best time in. I would call that more sports entertainment. That was because you had the perfect blend of characters, storytelling, wrestling. Like everything was at where it needed to be that perfect blend of everything. Whereas right now, I do think you have some of the strongest wrestling happening. Like it not maybe not WWE, but like before it was NXT 2.0, NXT was like on fire. AEW has some puts on some great matches. Like some of the matches that we're getting right now, if you're looking at it from a wrestling point of view, a technical standpoint, there's some of the most entertaining matches you can find. You know, there's a lot to be said about Attitude Era and even some before then, which are on some of my list that we can kind of go over later in part two. But to me, there's a nice vague difference between Attitude Era and sports entertainment, and then wrestling at its purest. So, you know, I think, and we can break that down in a little bit here. I think we are getting some really pure wrestling and pretty solid matches when the bookers book them right. Is my thought. George?
Mm, there's talent up to the wazoo right now, like in this, not just in the company itself of WWE, but in the business. Just lots of upcoming and just talent that had not just upcoming, but has been here for a while. But because of um the huge, because of the like imbalance there is from promoter to talent, and the relationship that has always been that way in wrestling, um talent just kind of has to take it in that sense. Do you know what I'm saying? They don't have a choice. Like these are that's how you make money in the business, you know, and you sit and you wait for a chance. And I'm not saying they haven't done some good things. Like, you know, there's people who've been in the company for decades and they finally did get their big, you know, big spot in the sun. But longevity in that big spot, very short. You know, it's like it's almost, sometimes it feels like, okay, here's your company watch, like thanks for your like 15 years, you know. And it's like, I get it, you get one big moment and not everyone is a superstar, and that is the competitiveness of the business, you know. And if there wasn't that kind of competitiveness, you wouldn't have the talent trying to rise to the top, as they say in the business. But um you forget that like they're not behind the flash and all that. They're not just superstars. They're people too. They're people who have lives, who have jobs, who have bodies that hurt, who have dedicated countless hours to a career that, honestly, like, how many of them are really going to be financially compensated for the pain that they and toll that they put their sons through, and also their families through, because they're on the road most of the
Yeah.
time. You know, it's
We're on the road more than any other sport.
more. There's no season for it. It's
Yeah.
all year round. So it that's really, I think, where I think all three of us can agree that that's where the respect for these performers is. It's never, when we say we don't like things about what's going on, I don't think it's ever towards any of the performers, because
Oh no.
even if it's a heel or somebody who you don't think has the talent or is not quite there yet and you don't find entertaining, you still respect them because you know what it takes to just even get to where they are now. Like and it sucks because there's so much talent. There's so much talent. There's such a wide pool of wrestling talent right now, but such a small amount of limited spots. And it's frustrating when you see somebody finally get a chance and an opportunity to be on TV, and it's like, you're just like, man, you're not doing anything to help this guy, you know,
No.
or this girl.
Which is kind of a good little segue into the current controversy that's kind of happening right now that just sort of took place last Monday night. The current WWE Women's Tag Team Champions Sasha Banks and Naomi, they were booked in a 6-way. Was it singles match or was it a tag match? I think it was
a
to
tag
determine
match
who
or
was.
something.
But
it was like a
weirdly
6-way
determined who was
singles
going to
match.
go on. Yeah, to
So the number
determine
one
who
contender match.
exactly, and they did not feel comfortable wrestling with two of the contestants who have not been named, which is good. And they went to Vince and everybody, and they were like, "Hey, we don't feel comfortable. We don't want to do this. We want to be taken out of this match or something. They don't feel respected as the champions." And Vince was like, "Nah, this is it. This is how we're booking this." And they walked out of Raw. They left and did not come back for that evening. And then now they have been suspended indefinitely. All of their merch and everything's been taken down.
There's more to the story also. A lot of since Monday, a lot of facts have come out from people who are really close to not facts, but like stories have come out that the idea is that the two of them were going to win number one contender spots for respective titles. And them being RE women tag team champions were like, why aren't we just defending our titles at the next pay-per-view? Like, so do you understand what they did again, which they've done repeatedly in past pay-per-views for female championship matches? They decided to combine matches, essentially. They took what could have been 2 matches for females for championships, the tag team championships, and SmackDown. Oh, 3. So SmackDown and what could have been a tag team championship, a SmackDown championship, and a Raw championship on a pay-per-view. They decided not to have a tag team championship and then just put the tag team champion in the spot to face one SmackDown champion and then the other one to face the Raw champion. So they eliminated one of the championship matches. And not only did that happen, they didn't give the opportunity to somebody else who's been trying to get a championship match. So when you do that, you have eliminated 2 potential people who could have come up on singles, and then a team of tag team people who could have potentially gotten the bump and gotten put over on a tag team championship. Like, that's like 4 extra females that you essentially kind of cut off at the legs that you have in a company full of females who are talented and who are all up and coming and who probably want a shot at a championship at a pay-per-view, even if they're not going to win it. It's just like
taking spots away from talent and women who deserve it. They worked real hard, and this is kind of, we've seen that Steph has stepped away and Triple H has stepped away because of their health and everything like that, and I think they had a lot to do with the women's wrestling booking for a very long time, and you can kind of see who's whoever's booking the women's matches, because they do book them differently. They either have Vince in their ear or it is Vince, and he's never booked a women's match very well. You constantly will see a lot of like, oh, let's just put them all on the screen. Look, there's screen time. Why are you complaining? Screen time. And that's not the problem here is they're not getting the opportunities where it needs to be, and that's not just in the women's department. I mean, that's happening everywhere, as you were saying earlier, with like there's so much talent in this industry right now, and you really only have 2 major corporations that are putting out content on that matter. You've got TNA, but they're not really doing a lot anymore. And didn't they just absorb Ring of Honor, something like that? Someone just bought Ring of Honor not too long ago, I believe so. So it's smart, because then it can kind of give them a leg up, but it's taking spots away for people that could be holding titles in other positions, and people be recognized on the level that they deserve to be. And that was on the roads of another controversy. That was one of the main reasons that Cody left WWE. He went to AEW to kind of get the recognition that he deserves, and he got it. He was the champ. He was really in control. He was not completely, but I mean, he took it to another level over in AEW, and then he pissed everybody off over there by coming back at WrestleMania and wrestling Seth in a fairly lackluster match, in my opinion. It was technically sound, but there was nothing to be said about the match for the WrestleMania moment that he had. So you're getting a lot of this watered down wrestling, especially with the WWE right now. So that's my thought on it. Anyone? Dan? No? Cool. So if we look back at the Attitude Era, this really wasn't the problem back then. You had two corporations. I mean, you could say it was the problem in WCW back then, but you had the Monday Night Wars. You had these two companies vying for the top spot, and competition is good. It's the best thing that could possibly happen, and it was hot. They had, I mean, I don't even remember. They had like 8, 9, 10 million viewers at some point. Like the numbers were insanely high in the Attitude Era. You had formations of stables that were just taking things to the next level. It was insane. Some of the talent that you had back then, and the mic skills alone were fantastic. Where would you guys say that like the Attitude Era started? Like, do you think it was like at the King of the Ring in '97 when Austin really dropped his 316 promo and kind of took off and helped charter everything into there? What do you guys say? George?
I guess so. I mean, I think Austin is definitely one of the cornerstones. But I think there was like I always feel like there was like a build up to that point, you know, that other people have kind of laid the foundation for it. Austin, like, I mean, it was a perfect. If you say that is the point, I would say it was the perfect accident. Kind of, he was at the right place at the right time. You know, I don't think he was even supposed to originally win that King of the Ring. I think that was the decision. It was
supposed to be Triple H.
Yeah, that was the decision they made later. Triple H didn't win that King of the Ring. And you imagine how different. Moment. Yeah, you imagine how different like everything would have changed if Austin didn't win that and didn't make that speech. You know, it's crazy. A lot of things had to fall into place for him to. You know, I mean, he could be credited for being the one who started it, but I think he even would be willing to admit that a lot of things had to fall into place perfectly. There had to be people like Triple H. There had to be a Shawn Michaels. There had to be a Rock that was up and coming. There had to be all these people and all these right little things that just somehow like build up to that one point where it's like, bam, this is it, 316, like on this day. You know, so to say that maybe that's not the start of the Attitude Era as so much as maybe that is like, that's the jumping off point. You know, there was a big lead up to it though, that you kind of felt like wrestling was like something's interesting is happening. It's changing more and more, and you're starting to see like mainstream, as you were talking about, all those viewers, like mainstream attention to it, and then suddenly it's like, whoa, like it's in your face, everybody's fucking talking about it.
It's really hard to imagine personally, like if Austin, I mean, look, there's so many factors, but if Austin were to come up in today's era, he would have been brushed to the side like so many have been, because he was given free reign. He cut that promo. That promo was not written for him, like all of them are today. I don't know how that works exactly. I think once you get to a certain level, I think the New Day was given some free reign. I think Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman are given reign to do what they will.
Given some reign.
AJ Styles.
A little bit, yeah.
But Paul Heyman's part of creative,
but those are the established guys though. Like you gotta give someone a shot when you're younger to see who's a star, who's worthy of the spotlight. And when you're Vince handpicking who you think should be because you like the way he looks, and that's the first and foremost and only factor, you're gonna have fan backlash, and you're gonna have them rooting for people who they think deserve it, even if it's not like they don't love them, they just like them more than your pick, like anyone else that's getting
Bizarro.
Anyone. I mean, you know, I'll talk about it later today. Like Daniel Bryan was the result of fans just being fed up with Roman Reigns being forced down their throats. Like how many more How many more Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar, fucking Goldberg, matches, wins are we? They're like, give us the wrestlers. The people in the stands have the voice, and they voiced their discomfort and dislike, and didn't matter. Didn't matter at events. It continues to be that way. I feel. Finally, Reigns turned heel. Thank fucking God. And he's doing good. Like,
Yeah.
and I hear he's like a good dude backstage, and he's a good leader, and that matters. But like, how many people have been passed up that could have been in his position and done a better job? Countless.
So many. I mean, so many people
Countless.
that they put the title on, but really only left it for like a few months, or
Yeah.
had just like lackluster runs, like people like Kevin Owens and AJ Styles. He had a long championship run, but like it wasn't any, like it kept being, Roman Reigns in these big matches, Brock Lesnar coming back for the main event, which was like, a big issue in today's era, where it's no longer about that title. You look back in those early pay-per-views back in the 90s and early 2000s, like the main event was the title match, period. Unless it was like Vince or something like that, but like it was the title, and they were usually pretty damn good matches because you had the best people on it, and they weren't holding this belt for like 2-3 years. Like they've had runs where people are holding it for like 2 years, like a year and a half, and you go through the whole roster and there's no good people for them to fight because they're just not booking anybody correctly, and all their best people are mid-carders or not even holding belts, and it's crazy. So it's just nuts. I still want to dive more into the wars. Like if you guys had to, where would you say it was the turning point for WWE? I mean, this is documented in all these documentaries and all this crap, but like you had WCW winning these Monday Night Wars for a very long time. They had the first real big mainstream faction in the NWO. You brought Nash and Hall over to WCW and had it look like it was an invasion, like a legit, like these people were just on Monday Night Raw the night before, and next week they're suddenly showing up on Nitro, and like it was intriguing, and you're like, what the hell's happening here? All these talent are going over there, and people were watching it more than they were watching WWE. I mean, what are some of your big moments back from the Attitude Era? That was one of the big ones for me that I remember watching. I think with you, George, like definitely at some point.
I'm gonna talk. If I talk about this, I guess. All right.
We can hold off.
Favorite moments, honestly. The unholy wedding with like Taker and Steph, and
That was a good one, man.
And of course, the Helmsley, the Helmsley McMahon era, stuff. I love seeing like like Triple H and Pac and all those guys doing like the crazy shenanigans. Like, I think there's something to be said about like the Attitude Era when that you just kind of had free reign, honestly, back then. But also it was funny because I like it because because of who Steph and Hunter are now to the company, that it's like they've essentially lived their whole lives in front of us, and it's kind of like there's always been like a second reality show behind what is going on. Wrestling, of course, most people understand the concept that it's kayfabe, like the stories are written, the outcome of the matches are predetermined and things like that, and the wrestlers go in there and they're like stuntmen kind of, and they choreograph a fight together and do something together to entertain the masses. But what's interesting about wrestling fans is they don't just follow the main story that's going on. There's always a story behind the scenes, and it was just kind of one of those funny things where real life and the story that you saw on the screen blurred together. and then you're like, oh dang, like they really are together. And now it's like funny to see now, like 20 years later, like who they are, like the life that they've built, the company that they brought up, the talent
Yeah.
that the two of them have ushered in within the last 15 years. Like, and just goes to show, like, that maybe I'm always going to have a little bit of like a soft spot for wrestling. And I think the two of them actually are one of the main reasons, is that like I see how much they love the company and how much they've put in, that there's still
Yeah.
people who care that much about it.
And
So
it's sad that they're not hyper involved right now. They both
yeah,
stepped
because
away
of
for a
health
little while.
issues and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So then we could go on. And for me, Attitude Era was something that was a point of pride. It was Georgia. No, I said this last week. We would go to, what was it, 7-Eleven, White Hen Pantry at the corner of Wilmette and Ridge, and hang out, and then get like, they had a competition where if under the like, Mountain Dew and other Pepsi products probably, where you take the cap off and you could get a chance to go to WrestleMania back in the day, and it was like my biggest dream at one point, because that was it. That was all, like, that was Attitude Era at its top, and I really just wanted to keep going doing that. But it all kind of changed when they had that merger. So 2001 comes around, and WCW finally lost. I think they screwed themselves in that they had who was it? It was Bischoff who announced, he was like, "Oh, and at the end of tonight's Raw, because they pre-taped it, we're gonna have Mankind win the championship and blah 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 blah." And like the second half of Nitro, the numbers plummeted because everyone flipped over to USA and watched that, and it then eventually they had the reigns were all being used by the booking was all being done by like Nash and other people, and it was all falling, and it was no bueno. And then Vince bought WCW, and as we were talking earlier, he ruined competition. There wasn't any anymore because he owned everything there was to do with wrestling other than some indies at the time. So I didn't really watch much after that during the Ruthless Aggression era. I think, George, you kept going because there was a lot of, that was like Edge's era and introduction of like John Cena and like all these people that were kind of slowly being introduced. Even Brock and like, Batista and like all these people came in then. Was there any highlights that you thought that you enjoyed on that one, or was it what? Feels?
I mean, I feel like I did miss like a good part of it. I think I stopped watching like maybe immediately after high school, and I didn't pick it up until like 3 or 4 years later. And by then, John Cena was already a household name.
Sure.
And he was entertaining for what he was doing. And I understand, like every single era, I think has like that one person that they put everything on. Obviously, we said that Attitude Era was Stone Cold. And the Ruthless Aggression Era is named after John Cena. He put the whole company down his shoulder after what was considered the height of wrestling, as we talked about, and he put on that responsibility, and he carried the team through the whole entire company through probably, I would say, its worst parts of he took all the criticism for what was wrong with the company, but
Yeah.
like I think what's interesting to see is that like John Cena's career is also, and I think he recognizes it as well, is that his career is built on the backs of like countless other talent that's in there that he had to essentially wrestle with. One of the first ones that comes to mind, of course, you already mentioned, is Edge, but also like Randy Orton, who's been there just as long as he has, who's still there. Randy Orton, you could say what you want about him, but when he was when it was just him and Cena, like wrestling at the top, like they put in great matches because of the fact that they had such great history with each other coming into the company together at the same time. So I think he takes a lot of the flack that was wrong with the company and that has been wrong with the company, and he does it gracefully. Honestly, I don't think he ever seems very like bitter about any of the shit that people say about him, and what's wrong with him. He's during that time and during the ruthless aggression era, a lot of complaints that we still talk about stem from that era, because that was just the way they were running business, and a lot of things that are still wrong with it started around that era, and because he's the face of that era, they point to him as to why things are wrong, when it's not rightfully so, because at that time he didn't really have much choice. He was just up and coming, and he isn't John Cena he is today. And now that when he finally became the John Cena that he is today, you saw him try his best to give people chances and opportunities as much as he possibly could, and to highlight other people who never got a chance in the company. And I think even for him, he's now fed up to the point where he doesn't even want to, he's just like, I'm done. Because he can't, they obviously, it's not that he doesn't love the fans and he doesn't love the business. He bleeds like WWE and he loves wrestling. But it's like, I feel like to a certain point, even he couldn't, he's done what he can to help. And now it's time for him to move on. And it's great. I love where he is now in his career, because he's doing some great shit.
I feel like he's one of the only wrestlers that really kind of spanned two eras.
He is.
In that he went through the ruthless aggression era, and now, and then he was also the face of the PG era.
Yeah. Imagine having to usher that in and having to be the guy that the company put the shoulders on. Then everything's wrong with the PG era. They were like, that's also John's fault.
That's crazy.
And for the guy that everyone pretty much scapegoats because he's easy to do because he's the man at the top, they scapegoat him and they say it's his fault, and he still takes it the way he does, and he's still, he's not bitter about it. It's amazing.
You can prove his star power alone by his run with the US championship, the United States championship. When he had that belt, suddenly those matches were fantastic. And to your point, he had that open challenge, and he was putting anybody who wanted to put, wrestle him. And he put on some great ones, and with some people, some young up and comers, that one he had one with Kevin Owens, and he had ones with
he had a couple with Kevin Owens, and they were really freaking good.
Sami Zayn, some amazing battles. Seth, yeah, he made it important, and he made it of note, and then it faded to the background again, and they gave it to R-Truth or something or whatever, and yeah, it's just kind of sad to see some of these mid-class belts, the mid belts kind of just fall by the wayside, that those don't get any time. They're always on the pre-show, or they're not on the main pay-per-view roster, when the IC title was one of the most premier titles you could win back in the day. So a lot has changed in wrestling as we've been watching, because I can only speak for myself. I'll go back and I'll current day, I'll watch some random matches that I've read about. I don't watch them a lot because I don't want to sit through the drama, because they don't really write it really well anymore. The soap opera isn't good right now. It's it's those dark seasons in the middle of Saturday Night Live, that 10-year period where it was just bad writing. And that's basically what's happening for the last 15, 20 years now with wrestling, as the writing has been not great.
I've always questioned whether you talk about the mid-tier belts not getting any love or whatever intention. I always felt this is the problem, is that it's a matter of brand dilution, right? Unfortunately, having WCW and that counterweight fall off and buying up their competition, they're still struggling in the sense that now they have extra talent and more talent than they can put on TV, and it's the spot is limited, and then therefore the belts become less important because you're still trying to run the company like it's two different shows versus each other sometimes, right? You have SmackDown and you have Raw, and you want to make it feel like it's got that WCW versus WWF feel, but it's not, because it's still the same company. But like,
stupid.
It's still in competition with each other, but they're not, because they're still the same company. And then therefore it ends up being that there's just less time for anybody in general, because you're still trying to run the company like two shows are in competition to each other. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, they're still stuck in that same mindset from the Attitude Era, because that's the goal. That was the golden era, and they're still trying to make that formula work with the pieces that they have now, and they don't have that because the way it worked back then was organic. It happened on its own due to natural competition, and now you're trying to manufacture this fake competition between two shows, and it doesn't work because you're still under the same company, and at the very top of the pyramid, it's still the same thing.
Yep.
Do you understand what I'm saying? And that's why the belts are not as important. The lower belts are not as important because of the brand dilution. So it's like, oh, there's a champion on SmackDown. Oh, okay. There's also a championship on like Raw. And there's also a championship in NXT. But then they also have secondary. It's like, come on. There's no, for a 2-hour pay-per-view for every month, like there's not enough time to put everybody who's onto that pay-per-view, you know? Like,
and they had that time when they were running like 2 pay-per-views a month, because they would have a Raw pay-per-view and a SmackDown pay-per-view, and it was just like I think I calculated the numbers at one point, but like if you were watching just WWE, you'd have like 20 or 30 hours of wrestling, like minimum a month, and that's just like absolutely insane. You had like 3 hours on Monday, 2 hours on Friday. They had main event, they had NXT, they had the pay-per-view. Like, it was just like you've got you're putting out all this content, but like there's no, like you were saying, there's no consistency. You know, when you have main event, it has almost little to nothing to do with anything that happened on Raw or SmackDown. It's like it's its own little show, and like, what's the point of doing that? You know, like, yeah, you got to put talent out, but nobody's going to care because it doesn't tie into what you've been watching. It's not the main story, so nobody cares about like the C, D, and E and F stories that are happening with, like, you know, R-Truth and Dana Brooke and, you know, all these people that are just like filler talent, which is unfortunate for some of them.
Yeah.
But, you know, I will say one good thing that's come of this new era is the new women's wrestling. You know, I think it has been changed a lot, and you get, you know, these amazing matches that can go for match of the year that are just absolutely phenomenal. Most of those matches happened in NXT, I would say. There's a few on the main roster that might be up there, but like, you know, you can look at, you know, of like 5 or 6 names that of the women wrestlers that were like in best matches, and to a point that's kind of, you know, WWE's problem is they have only like a handful of women that the bookers have any faith in. It shouldn't be that way. You know, they've got all these talented women down in NXT, and they bring them up to, you know, who are the champions, who are, you know, proving themselves night in, night out, and then they come to the main roster and they are part of a battle royale. And it's just like, you're not doing anything. You're just leaving the belt on, you know, on Becky, on Charlotte, on Sasha, on Bayley, on Becky, on Charlotte, on it's just this ever rotating circle of, you know, I only care about these, you know, the bookers, Vince only cares about these 2 or 3 women, so he just keeps popping the belt on them when there's so many other talented people that can have this belt. I'm going to say this. When Dan and I talked about doing this episode, I was like, let's do positive stuff, and here I am just shit talking the whole time, and it's true. It's hard to really enjoy the story of wrestling when you know so much about what's happening behind the scenes and how horribly Vince is you know, probably treating his talent and booking his talent and not relying on anybody, how tight he has the reins, and it's rough, you know, and I really want to watch AEW. I don't know where to even watch it over here. I know that it's not the best thing right now, but I think it would be cool to watch because it's
You
just
can at
a
least
little
watch
different.
the AEW Dark matches that are only on their YouTube channel, and you can
Oh,
see
I'll
like
watch
you
that.
can see it's like their NXT basically, and it's the young up and comers like trying to make a name for themselves. And AEW is man, they have been on a hiring frenzy of people escaping or being fired from WWE, and I don't know how long to keep that up. Something's got to
Yeah,
give. I don't know.
it sounds very
Uh,
familiar.
yeah, it does sound familiar, but I mean, at least they're hiring people that are like good and young, and not like all old dudes that are just gonna like
45-year-old Hulk Hogan.
run shit into the ground. Because these, you could argue that they're fans of AEW are like still actual fans of wrestling and not like just doing what they've been doing for so many years or decades. It's I don't know, it's hard it is self I'm gonna say it a few more times in this podcast. It's hard to be a wrestling fan. Like, where
It
do
is.
you find your inspiration? Like, what are you latching on to? It's like you're it's like you're underwater holding on to one thing while all these everything's like hitting you in the face, like bad writing, not wrong guy being pushed, one thing, but then there's like just there's something, and for me, there's nothing really right now,
Yeah,
and
it's hard.
I haven't really
It's
been a wrestling
it's
fan
the
for a few
man,
years now.
Becky Lynch.
Is it? I'm
She's
kind of
man,
over her as
every
well.
every single pay-per-view that I've watched in the last like 6 months, she's got the best match. When
She's
when she
amazing.
was not on hiatus, when
Yeah.
she was before she left and when she came back, she's always had the best match of the pay-per-view.
Mm.
Which we'll get into later. It's story time real quick. So we had a friend who worked in the company at one point, and like their uh charity side of it, whatever they did, not whatever, for WWE, and this person was not a wrestling fan by any means. She just wanted to do the charity work. So instead of taking the tickets and watching, we got the opportunity to go to uh Monday Night Raw, SmackDown, live events, whatever. Whenever they were in Chicago, it was always a rotating cast of the three of us and someone else. And we got to sit in pretty good seats every 2 or 3 times a year. We got to see them live. I would probably say those were some of the best times to be, not necessarily be a wrestling fan, but like we were in it, we were involved, we watched it we didn't watch it like religiously or anything like I used to, but we would see them, Raw and SmackDown here and there, keep up with it every couple weeks, and then we'd go to them and follow it, and like it was a lot of fun to do that, and we had some crazy times with like trying to get chants going and just yelling at all the
I
different
will
wrestlers.
say,
Especially was like a live one and there's no one there, you could yell into the ring and the wrestler would hear you and stuff, and
yeah, I
that
will
was that
say,
was nuts.
as a wrestling fan, honestly, like being at a live event is like a really great enjoyment. A lot of people talk about like I kind of equate it to, for me, I equate it to like baseball. Like, I can't watch baseball on television. Like, it's boring as hell.
I will fall asleep.
I fall asleep. But like at
I'll fall asleep
at a
watching
game,
wrestling.
it's way more entertaining because there's like people and I'm hanging out. I'm like, it's outside. Like, like there's a lot more to it. The atmosphere feels much more entertaining than watching it at home. And I think wrestling has that same thing too. Is that being a live event turns what's probably already at a television show that's at a 7, it turns it up to a full 10. Like, it really
At least
gives you that extra like oomph that is missing at home, and it is much more enjoyable at a live event. It doesn't even matter if you're in the fucking nosebleeds. Like, there's something to it, being in the crowd, being like in the stadium with these people, like, makes it that much more real, even though you understand they're real people, but it's like that much more real. And they do put on a great live event, I will say that.
Do you guys remember when we went to, obviously, Ring of Honor, which was probably one of the greatest single live wrestling events I think I would say I've ever been to.
Yeah.
I'd hope it was up on the top of yours. but it was like the second or third time we went. It wasn't the first time we went, and we were sitting up against. We were like sitting on the rail, like front row seats and everything, and I was wearing this shirt, and we every at those old like tiny events, there was a couple of things that happen that don't happen in the WWE. A lot of people will throw streamers and toilet paper and stuff like that into the ring, which is
Not
super
toilet
cool.
paper.
No, some people will throw toilet paper, but it's
Okay.
generally streamers that get thrown into the ring, and there's a fun call and response aspect to the crowd. Instead of just chants, someone will go, just in the like a dead moment, someone will just yell "Rasslin," and then the rest of the crowd's all yeah, and it's absolutely hilarious, and it had happened several times that evening. And what, you want to cut me off? What do you got?
Well, I don't. Do you want? You should finish your story first.
So
I know what you're going to say it again.
so we were all having a wonderful time. I am like jacked in this event. Like there was a moment when the camera was coming at me. I'm screaming like a maniac for effect. And then it was kind of a dead moment, and I was like, oh, here's my chance. And I just yell, Rasslin. Fucking nothing. It was dead silence, and I yelled it loud. They fucking heard me. And then like 2 minutes later, someone else yells, Rasslin, the whole crowd, yeah! And I was
Now,
like, oh,
Tim,
fuck you guys.
Tim,
And
this
then
speaks
that got the
volumes
laugh.
because Tim. Now, not only was that a hilarious moment, but like right after when no one did anything, man was like, nah, fuck you guys, and everyone laughed because they heard that. But like now, Tim, this makes it all clear. Tim says during a dead moment, that is why you fucked up. They never do it during a dead moment. They do it after someone has had a good exchange of wrestling, and they go wrestling, and everyone's like, ah. And so Tim, if you
not always,
not always, yes. And you chose a random dead moment, and that is why no one responded. They're like, "What? They're just that wasn't like a particularly great." So no one said anything.
It was still absolutely hilarious, though.
It was hilarious, but like that's why you got to do it after like a nice little exchange or like some good wrestling moments. And Tim just like picked a random dead moment, and that's why everyone was like, "What? No, like wrestling."
It was good though.
It was good. It was still a good moment.
That was a great show.
I think for WWE are like. They're like larger than life, and I think that's really what we can watch wrestling in a gym or a armory or whatever, like tiny play, and that's great in that fan reaction. But when they multiply that times 1,000 and then put in all the show, the big screen, the ramp, the entrances, the pyrotechnics, like it just turns it up to like a whole new level of a live event that. First time seeing it, I don't see how you aren't in awe of it, because you're just like the production of it all, especially Smirch coming from, I mean, this doesn't spoil, coming from your background of doing production and things like that, and you understand how much work it goes into putting all that, and it's a traveling show that goes nationwide, international, worldwide. It's crazy. They set that all up like overnight, like. We arrived the night before, and we got to stay up all day and then put on the show all night and then tear it down and then go to the next fucking city. Like, imagine being part of that crew and being on that schedule, to put that show on every single fucking night.
You guys, I don't know if you knew this, but like whenever I was with you guys, like I would experience small bouts of anxiety when something went wrong, because I'm like, oh, they're fucking up. Oh, that was wrong. Oh, they're fucking up. I'm like, no, somebody didn't go off. Scrambling backstage. They're like, go to commercial. Like
the lights.
I would just, and then and then it'd be right. And then it'd be like, oh, okay. Remember, I'm here to have fun.
Oh, there's feedback on that mic.
Feel secondary like anxiety from these people like fucking up or something.
Yeah.
For some reason, when I was watching, I was just like, whatever they fuck. But when I was there, I was like, I don't know, something about it was different. Luckily, that didn't happen too often. It's a production.
It's an army. Honestly, it's an army. It really is. And the fact is a lot of people are working behind the scenes that you do not see, and they employ hundreds of people, and it's a moving circus, goes from town to town all over the world.
I understand, like when I see a rope break or a turnbuckle come loose, I mean that's rough, but like you know how many people, how many hands are passed down to like hire some dude, and this dude doesn't show up there, so they get a replacement dude who's something, or maybe he hasn't have done it a lot, and they're like scrambling to set this up. He's like, "Hey, I'm not sure about this," or he doesn't want to say, "I'm not sure about setting this up," and then that happens, and it's like, of course it fucking does. You guys are doing this in a day-to-day basis practically, and you have like you're passing information down the pipe, and the last minute changes, oh god, that they've done, that Vince is like, I've decided this person's going to win today instead. Like, what a fucking shit show it must be backstage. Like, this amount of shit we haven't seen is probably astronomical. It's for me, I like hearing when, something happens backstage because I'm very curious. But I think for the most part, as for me, being in the kind of not the same kind of show business, but something it's still in a business of show, I'm relieved I don't get too much backstage because I don't know how much I'd want to know. Like, we get enough as it is. I truly feel that the lack of kayfabe has like taken something away. Even though what can I say? I can't help it. Like, I'm on Bleacher Report. I like to read like what's happening, but like you're just getting straight up things. This is going to happen on Raw, or this will happen in the next few weeks, and you're just kind of like, okay, like this is how it is now. Like, it's no more surprises, and that's kind of sad. And it's another thing working against wrestling these days, in my opinion. But what are you gonna do? They're the same reason I complain about them revealing big reveals in Marvel trailers. It's like they were trying to put butts in seats for people who wouldn't call themselves real wrestling fans, that are just casuals, or trying to get them to tune in. And what are you going to do? That's the nature of making money. It is what it is.
I will say the not watching weekly, hell, barely watching annually. When you do tune into like a pay-per-view these days, the one thing that's nice is the WWE really knows how to make a vignette and like a little pre-match like movie. They're like a little 5-3-5 minute.
They got a great formula. Whoever does that,
and everything.
Yeah, whoever is doing the editing on that, they got a great formula. They've been doing it for years.
Like, editors,
you can feel like you've been watching for a while because they make it a compelling and interesting moment, and I'm like, oh cool, yeah, like I want AJ to win this match, because not just he's one of my favorite wrestlers on the most talented in there, but I'm like, oh, that's a good story, but like if you were to watch weekly, you'd be like, that one segment that they took 20 seconds of was like 10 minutes long and horrible on live TV, and it's just ridiculous.
I would like to watch just that, like in its weird form of entertainment. Like, can we just get like the edited version? Like,
dude, I actually prepping for the show, I watched a few of those vignettes, like the lead ups, because actually I didn't even watch the matches that I was thinking of were best matches. I watched some of the storyline vignettes because I'll get into the reasoning why, but essentially I watched those vignettes, and it was, I mean, some of them are good, and it put me back to those matches, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that storyline now. That's why I was invested in this match, is because this happened, and like, oh yeah, like I remember the pop that receives, but that was like a 10-minute stare down, and then they said one thing, like
It's just, you don't get the talent as much anymore as you did back with like The Rock and Austin and Jericho and Edge and Christian and like all these people who were like amazing on the mic. Kurt Angle was like shockingly hilarious and fun to watch, like these great promos. You don't see them anymore because they're all scripted, and the people writing don't I don't feel like they understand the characters that they're writing for, because they're writing for like 30 to 50 different characters a night, and it doesn't make sense. So you miss out on a lot of that because it's not coming from a raw emotional place. It's coming from writers. Like there's that clip, I don't even know who it was, some newer wrestler who was like going over his lines right before like he hops on screen, and he walks into the camera and like he's talking, and like if you look down at his hand, you can see him take his promo notes and like toss them, like he flicks them to the side mid promo.
That
and like
was the tag team partner to Otis, whatever his name was.
Yeah, whatever. And you're just like, you're like, this is wrestling now.
Husky
You know,
Harris?
this is a lot of what it is. If your name isn't AJ Styles, if it's not Roman Reigns, if you're not like top dog, you've got people reading notes and like hoping it comes off as genuine, and
And
you know,
it's
it
like
doesn't.
coming through like the fucking pipeline of like, and it's like you might as well have like the you know, the censors writing these things because they're just fucking so formulaic and the same thing, and it's just like, oh, this is approved by legal, so this is what we should go with. It's like, man, this is like the reason wrestling's on the map is because of the fucking Attitude Era, and like you got Stone Cold like cutting promos, maybe things he should have been saying, and like those were like some of like that was why wrestling got as popular as it is. Remember your roots, fuckers. Like,
Yeah, if you go back though and watch a lot of those promos and segments and stuff like that, there was a lot of shit that you just can't do anymore. You know, like,
well,
man, the
that's
way that they
true.
booked their women's wrestling was a fucking joke. You know, like they weren't wrestlers for a while until like Lita and Trish came around, like, you know, even Molly Holly and like Jacqueline, like they were wrestlers, you know what I mean? But like you had glorified valets that were coming out in their bra and panties, and like, you know, that's if you're like a 17-year-old kid, that's entertaining, but like, you know, I can't watch that shit anymore. I'm like, I'm looking at it and I'm like, that's just, you know, that's wrong, and I feel bad for some of them, you know, because it's what it was. And, you know, at the time, yeah, I was like, yeah, because, you know, I was fucking 16 years old, 17 years old. I didn't know any better.
I mean, it's sad to
And a
watch.
lot of the
I could still watch it because you know, fucking Trish Stratus and
sure, but like, you know, they weren't being put on as wrestlers. They were being put into bra and panty matches. Like that's not
Tori
wrestling.
Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, they're gorgeous, but like, you know, that's
Yeah,
they're
I'm with
being
you.
exploited live on television.
You
Like
said you
it's
couldn't
just
watch it. I feel like that's a stretch.
And that even
I
went
won't
through
go back
like
and really
the
watch those.
and even that was even an issue all the way through like the Ruthless era, and you know, even into the PG era. I mean,
I
we'll
mean,
get to
shit,
that.
didn't like Edge have a victory? Like he won the championship and celebrated by like having sex with Lita live on television or
Yeah,
something
that
stupid
was
like that.
Jesus Christ.
I was like, this is cringy. Like, why are you doing this? This has nothing to do
If
with
I don't know if
wrestling.
you
It's
recall, like Edge talking about that. Somebody said to him the day before that show, "Hey, look, you know, tomorrow we're all looking forward to the live sex celebration." And he's like, "Haha, what?"
yeah,
Like
like that's
literally informed the day before, not actually, like just assuming he knew, and then having to go out there the day of, realizing what you're gonna have to do, is ridiculous on so
yeah.
many levels.
Like I'm so happy now that when I'm watching the, you know, women's wrestling, I'm watching wrestling, and it's better. It's so much better to see these women being pushed up on a platform for where they um deserve. You know, the spotlight is on them, and they are some of the most talented people in this industry. And it's wonderful to see that it's come so far, especially with, you know, the women's revolution. You know, when you got like Paige and AJ, yeah. Didn't she have a last name, or was it just AJ?
AJ Lee.
Well,
Lee, thank you. I was like,
yeah,
I know her real last name. I can't
Not
remember what it was.
Styles. Lee.
AJ Lee. It was Mendez now. That's her real name or something, isn't it?
yeah.
And you know, you got they ushered in the new era, and now you've got people like Bailey and everybody. So it's absolutely fantastic to see where it is now, because as I said earlier, you know, some of these every pay-per-view that I've watched, the women's matches are always the best. I'll occasionally have like an AJ Styles match or a Seth Rollins match that's up there that's really good, Kevin Owens, but like again, they're not booked right, you know, and it's sad. KO had a good match at Mania because it was against Austin. Shockingly, that was a good match. It was like a no holds barred, and they went around the arena, and it was, you know, little very little wrestling happened, but it was entertaining and it was good. Not just from like this is an old man Steve Austin wrestling. I'm like, I would have enjoyed watching that at any point in time. It was pretty good. So it. But again, for me, that Mania, it was Becky Lynch versus Bianca Belair, and it was fucking amazing. If you want,
Belair is top tier.
So insanely talented.
I will say that it's interesting to see, like, it's called the women's evolution or revolution, and it's interesting to see the transformation the whole division has taken, right? They really it makes you question whether it's because we've seen such low lows that, like, now that they're finally kind of at a decent standpoint, that we're like willing to accept it, even though they're not quite equal yet. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, because we've seen them go through this attitude era where they were just treated as eye candy, to the ruthless aggression era, which, they were great wrestlers, but still treated as eye candy. And then PG era, when because they weren't eye candy and WWE didn't know what to do with them, they saw less and less and less and less chances of opportunity, to things like WrestleMania matches being canceled, getting 2-minute matches, getting all this stuff in the PG era that was just so wrong, for them, and not getting any opportunities. And then now that things are a little bit better, are we just feeling like it's good because of what we've seen in the past, like, 20 years? It's like, I think as far as talent, the talent was always there. I think there was always the talent. Now it's just that they're getting more opportunities than they did before. Are they still getting the same equal opportunities? Nope. But
it's a long ways to go.
It's still a long ways to go. It's still a long ways to go. So the positive side that I'm trying to add, that I think Tim was talking about, is that in the last 10 years, I would say the majority of the talent that I have any, like, strong feelings for, or like want to root for, or want to keep watching, and one of the reasons why I still was watching was because of the female talent that I saw, because I saw some really, really great talent, and that was some of the shining light within the company for the last 10 years, was the female, was that women's evolution, because I was like, finally. And it's like, finally, these people finally get a chance to do something and show us what they got. So I'm glad, but still a long way to go.
Yeah. But I mean, who knows? Vince is getting old. Hopefully he goes away. And then we'll get some good wrestling. But I don't know where it's gonna go anymore. It was like Triple H and Steph were like, they were the ones that should have been taking over. But I mean, his heart issues and everything, and like it kind of shows kind of how wrestlers back in the day were treated. Other than Triple H, like, a lot of these people's health is not great. Like, it really isn't. They're doing a lot more now for the wrestlers. It's also a long way to go as far as like how much they how much coverage and how they're taken care of. But like, I mean, look at like Scott Hall and like these type of people, and it's not, they're not in great shape, and it's not just all because of like the drugs and everything like that, but there's just Piper. There's so many people who have passed early because this is a taxing sport. Yeah, and like, again, there's a part where people are like, they know what they're getting into. I'm like, that's true. They're doing their part. They're like, no more spike pile drivers, and they're trying their best to kind of do and taper it. That's why you have a very different style of wrestling between WWE and AEW and Ring of Honor. WWE, there's a lot of banned moves, and a lot of these matches look the same if you kind of watch them, because they're taking it a lot safer than a lot of the other organizations are. Whether they're not trusting their talent or actually looking out for their health, it's who knows, but like, you look at wrestlers like Randy Orton and Miz, like, these guys didn't come up in the Attitude Era. They didn't come up with chair shots to the head. They came up in, ruthless aggression here and there, but like PG era, but like, they will be on this roster for the entirety of their career, because it's the safe play for them, because they're, you know, in better, they're being taken care of better, I guess, now. But like, they wrestle safer matches. You know, their style is more conducive of what Vince wants, and that's a safer, not as flashy match. And they're not going to put, you know, giant table spots on Monday night, on Friday night, or whatever SmackDown is anymore. That we'll put some on the pay-per-view.
This isn't to say they don't have it in them to do it, because the thing is if there's a good story about if you've ever seen the Randy Orton documentary, there's a good story is that when he first started out, he was like, I need to keep up with the big boys, because he's coming off the heels of the Attitude Era. And, you know, the people that he was wrestling with were like people who were big stars and hardcore players like Mick Foley. And he's like, I got to keep up with Mick. Mick's freaking using thumbtacks on barbed wire. And he felt like, I'm just this 20-year-old kid coming into the company, and I got to keep up with them. And it was actually Hunter who sat him down, Triple H who sat him down and was like, dude, like, you don't need to be jumping off the top rope. You're like 6 foot, you know, whatever, 6'11", or however tall he is, 6'7", and you're jumping, and, you know, 300 something pounds. And
6'7"?
He's tall. And he's
tall.
Randy Orton's stupid tall. And he's like, you don't have any business jumping off of, like,
yeah, he's pretty tall, 6'5".
He's pretty tall, yeah. You don't have any. He's like, you don't need to jump off of the top rope and do any of that. You know, like, that's not even a necessity. Oh, thanks for the Ray, Timeless. That's not even like you need to take better care of your body. And also, Randy Orton and a lot of people's moves that they do repeatedly, because of not so much that the move is unsafe, but because of the continued repetitive motion of that same move over and over again, day in, day out, it wears and tears. And Randy Orton has, you know, his moves are RKO. Everyone knows that. So that, because of the strain of that move that he does repeatedly night after night, he has to really take care of his shoulder. And has a horrible history of bad shoulder and neck and like collarbone injury and things that he's been doing. And it was during that time that earlier in his career where somebody, thank God, Hunter imparted the knowledge on him and was like, no, like, stop taking risks. Like, the goal of your career should be longevity. Like, and you need to take better care of yourself, because your body is the most important, like, thing for you right now. And that's when he finally changed his mind. And you see the prep work that he goes into to take care of his body. And that is probably the key to the longevity of his career, is that he was not the one to go out there and throw his body on the line like so many people who are trying to get over are always trying to do, you know. And it goes to show the difference. You see people like Daniel Bryan who've thrown their caution to the wind repeatedly, and, you know, and you see what happened to his career, as opposed to someone like Randy Orton who's like, and Miz, who's like, I wrestle smart. Miz is like willing to admit that. He's like, I wrestle smart. He's like, I make up for what you can't say I put on a bad match. It's still a solid match, but I'm wrestling smart. You know, like, that's just like his defense is like, I've been in this company how long now? 15 some odd years. I'm wrestling smart. Like,
you know what's crazy is, look at these guys that were like putting their shit on the line night after night, and like there's a few of them that are still going. The Hardys are still going.
But
the
like,
Dudleys
think about
are still
the
going.
wear and tear
like,
they are, and the shape of their bodies after these years.
It's nuts, man, that they're still doing this. And like, they put on some of the most insane matches that I've ever seen in my life. The shit that they put their bodies through with these ladders and these tables and these chairs, oh my, it's just ridiculous that they're still able to get up and do it. Now, I'm not going to say that they're doing it as well as they used to, but they've put in some matches in the last few years that are pretty darn close to some of their more iconic shit that they've done. Edge has put on some great matches since he returned, and, you know, that's saying something, because he is older, and he was gone for a while. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's been a crazy ride being a Rasslin fan, going from, you know, growing up for me, being a Hulkamaniac, to finding out he's not a good person, to going into the Attitude Era, to taking a break for a while to coming back and diving into it and going and enjoying some of the finest bonding moments that we've ever had watching wrestling, and now to kind of still loving it, but like I'll read about it and watch the good matches. I'll watch some Ricochet matches and these younger guys. I'll watch some Hangman matches and
poor Ricochet.
I like Adam Cole. Dan does not, and I don't think
hold on.
Adam Cole.
Adam Cole
Baby.
is an insanely talented wrestler.
Not yet.
Are we going to get to a cutoff point?
Hold on, I gotta say some stuff.
Are we getting to a cutoff point? Because if we're going to go into it,
we're getting there. I just it's so funny how he's basically spent. We were talking about all the eras, and it's basically become like wrestling. Like wrestling is pretty bad, and now we're gonna talk about the things we like about it. I'm about to say something I'd never say. Can we stop ripping on the thing we're currently talking about?
It's hard to do.
It's really taking it out of me, man.
It comes from a place of love, because the thing is we really, 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 really love the talent. Right. I see the hard work they put in, and like nowadays to be talent, like it was back in the Attitude Era, like they didn't have to worry about like handling so many different platforms. Like they just had to worry about being on TV. Right nowadays, like to be a real star, you got to handle your social media business. You got to handle all this like other stuff that's like not even like stuff that they had to consider even 10 years ago. Like now it's like every wrestler has to have like a presence, like not just like on WWE, but like world, like outside on different platforms outside of WWE too, because like that's like expected of you, and that's how you get any type of buzz going on, because you have to work a different type of game outside of show.
What I was going to say was that, the best part of wrestling is watching it with your friends.
Yeah,
with you guys.
100%.
There's really the second, I'm serious, like the second we stopped like getting together and watching this, like that was basically it, because like wrestling doesn't require your like full attention, and you missed another fucking whatever moment that we've seen 1,000 times, and we can like, and it's fun to like rip on it, but it is kind of sad to talk about like how pretty much what we had to say is mostly negative things, and that's because it's because we witnessed it in its peak as children, and it is seemingly never going to be as good, or teenagers, whatever. It's seemingly never going to be as good again, I don't think. From multiple fronts, maybe because one, it's hard to compete with nostalgia, but two, it's just Vince just doesn't care. The complete bastardization of what was once NXT has just become another Vince project, and I swear to God, Vince did that out of spite. Like saw Hunter's success and it's just like, nah, I don't want him. This is getting too much buzz. I'm gonna make this the same crappy thing that I do all the time. Like Hunter had something going there, man. He had some real magic. I reignited my love for wrestling and like really good matches and a place for people to go where wrestling mattered. And it's just the same shit.
Well, you know what it was.
Let's make Rick Steiner's son the champion because he's fucking. I hear he's pretty good. I don't know. Whatever. No offense.
Is that Steiner's son? Really?
Yeah. And it's just like, remember, like you guys had something going there, and Vince, had zero reasons to redo that. Like, because I swear to God, I was out of spite. The firing of William Regal was the dumbest thing you could have done. William Regal is the reason we have Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, Bayley. I don't know about Charlotte, but like Alexa Bliss. And like
Dusty had some hands in that too.
Okay, sorry, Dusty definitely did as well.
But William Regal is just respected like in the industry as like one of like the man, like so much. Such a great talent scout.
He is the reason we have so many great superstars up and coming right now. And to fire him for what reason, I couldn't tell you, but he was going to continue to find talent. Now, granted, it's talent that doesn't fit the bill for old Vince McMahon, who just wants, I guess, big dudes over actually
giant,
talented wrestlers.
Dudes.
And it's like, how can you like, it just, just the hardcore fans do not matter to Vince because, in a really fucked up way, he's not wrong. They will continue to watch because they want to root for their favorites. And in a way, it's like
the only thing you can do is not watch.
He's got them on the hook, so it's like I'm done. Like I don't want to feed that monster anymore. Like what's the point? Like I look, it's a really shitty thing to say, but and Tim said it without outright saying it. Like when Vince is gone, I have much higher hopes, not just for WWE, but for wrestling in general. I feel like he's just laid this landscape that it's really hard to do what you need to do, and maybe they'll get treated. I don't know. It's really sad, but I'm glad we can, I think, move on now and actually talk about things we like because it makes me feel happier inside.
You know what Triple H did to NXT and what he did to wrestling? He made it intimate again. Yeah. And do you know how he did that? One thing will make wrestling better. It is intimacy. He turned down the fucking lights. Like, why do I need to see who's in the crowd? I don't.
Look at
I
all
don't need to see him.
people
I need to hear him.
paying money.
Show me here and then. Even Raw back in the day, like they didn't have the fucking crowd lights on as much. You know, they were dimmed and they had that red aura around it. You know, but like it creates focus on the ring. Like it really does. And it was a more intimate thing because wrestling is an intimate matter when you look at it. It's two people in their fucking underwear. How more intimate can you get there? You know, trying to put on a show for everybody here. Like these two people are dancing for us and it's a story and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And when it's done right, it is some of the most beautiful sports entertainment you will ever see. You know, I mean, you can watch football all day long and enjoy it, but a really awesome high spot or a really, really well told wrestling match to me is just like so much better than like I was almost going to say like the Bears winning the Super Bowl, but I don't think anything would top that.
Jesus Christ. Come on.
But yeah.
Know your limits.
Yeah, almost. Okay.
So we haven't had it in so long.
We have gone on and on and on, but
our first
we are
longer than it
is
should
long.
Be, right?
Is long. It's a little longer than we anticipated. So we're going to wind this one down and then pick the next one up. Keep watching live here because we're going to keep going, but I am going to do a wind down. So this was part 1 of our Rasslin podcast, and it was a bit of a downer. So I apologize for that. And a lot of it was over here just shit talking my way out of this because that's what I do apparently when we talk wrestling. But
it's hard not to.
We're gonna do our favorite moments, our top moments, top wrestlers, top everything, happiness, good times.
And on a good note, this is what we call the shit sandwich.
So, as we wind this first part down, please make sure that if you like this or want to see the good part of it, at least give it a subscribe, turn that bell on the YouTube channel. Follow GJC327 on his Twitch here for us live. It's going to be weird times. Yes, it's like 10 or 11 in the morning in the US, but you can always catch us here and have a join in on the conversation. We've had a lot of people on this one, which I really appreciate. So thank you guys all for coming for this part 1. Follow us on all our socials, Modern Nerd or Nerd_Modern on Twitter, merchandise on Instagram, which I've seen him do a few things lately. He's becoming a little bit better, and GJC327 on all social media platforms. Thank you for coming, and stay tuned for part 2 coming shortly.